3 years ago, a bolt of lightning rewired your body at the molecular level. You've run faster than sound, saved thousands of lives, and eaten 4 tons of food per day just to stay conscious. And somewhere in all of that, you lost yourself completely. What superspeed actually destroys isn't your schedule or your relationships. It's your identity, the quiet accumulated sense of who you are. And by the time you realize it's gone, you've already been running too long to remember what you're running toward. Here's a question to sit with before we go further. Think about the last time you were completely still for 5 uninterrupted minutes. Now imagine that stillness feels like being buried alive, not occasionally, but every second of every day you're not moving at full speed. The lightning doesn't give you a power, it executes a replacement. The person who walked through that city on an ordinary Tuesday, their heart rate, their muscle composition, their neurological wiring, gone within 4 minutes of the strike. What stands up from the pavement isn't an upgraded version of you, it's something new wearing your face. Researchers studying real-world electrical trauma, including a landmark 2017 review published in the journal Neurorehabilitation, found that high-voltage survivors frequently describe a complete discontinuity of self, a before and after so sharp it feels like 2 different people sharing one body. Now scale that effect by a factor of 1,000. Your cardiovascular system restructures itself to operate at 10 times normal human efficiency. Your resting heart rate, previously somewhere around 70 beats per minute, now idles closer to 700. Your body fat disappears entirely because there is no metabolic surplus left to store. Every calorie is consumed the moment it arrives. You can feel electrical charge moving just beneath your skin, like a second circulatory system carrying current instead of blood. You are not a faster human. You are something else that used to be human. The distinction matters more than you think, because everything that follows depends on understanding that the person making decisions with these powers never agreed to have them. This week, notice how often you define yourself by your routines, your job, your pace, your habits, because those are exactly what the lightning took first. Picture yourself standing in line at a pharmacy. The person ahead of you is explaining their insurance situation to a clerk who has clearly never encountered this particular insurance situation before. Every second drags. Now imagine that is your experience of every human conversation, every meal shared with a friend, every first date, permanently, inescapably, with no off switch. A 30-second exchange between 2 people feels, from inside your accelerated perception, like sitting through an unabridged audiobook. You can count their blinks. You watch micro-expressions flicker across their faces. The half-second flash of irritation they're suppressing, the tiny muscular twitch before they decide to smile. Psychologists studying temporal perception disorders have documented cases where patients with disrupted time processing describe ordinary social interactions as a form of sustained psychological pressure. Your version makes those cases look mild. What this creates, practically, daily, is a performance. Every conversation you have is theater. You are consciously, effortfully, slowing your responses to avoid revealing that you processed everything they said before they finished their second word. You're not present, you're performing presence, and performance is exhausting in ways that compound over months, then years. The people who love you think you're calm and patient. They have no idea you're white-knuckling every interaction just to seem like someone they'd recognize. Start paying attention to how much energy you spend matching other people's pace in conversations. That friction, tiny for you, is your entire life now, at a magnitude you can't explain to anyone. Here is the number that will reframe everything else about your new life: 4,250,000. That is the approximate calorie count you need to consume every single day just to remain conscious and functional. Not to perform heroics, not to run at top speed, just to exist. If you weigh 170 pounds, your body is now burning the caloric equivalent of roughly 4.25 tons of food daily, approximately 8,500 pounds. To put that in language that lands harder, the average American grocery store stocks around 40,000 individual food products. At your metabolic rate, you would clear an entire store every 9 to 10 days just sustaining baseline function. Sports nutritionist research on elite endurance athletes, Tour de France cyclists for instance, have been documented consuming up to 9,000 calories per day during race stages, represents the absolute ceiling of human metabolic demand. Your requirement is roughly 470 times that ceiling. The practical consequence is immediate and brutal. You cannot leave your home without food. You cannot attend a meeting, a date, a funeral without calculating whether you've eaten enough in the last 20 minutes to stay upright. Push your powers without adequate nutrition and your body doesn't slow down gracefully. It stops. Completely. Mid-stride, mid-save, mid-sentence. You have fainted on rooftops. You have regained consciousness 3 blocks from where you started running with no memory of the collapse. Your power has a payment plan, and it collects whether you're ready or not. Audit your energy management this week, not calories, but how often you run on empty and expect full performance. The Speedster's trap is a version of something entirely human. What does accelerated healing actually feel like when your body outpaces every medical intervention designed to help it? The answer is one of the quieter horrors in your new biology. Break a bone, a clean fracture from a fall at high speed, and you have, at best, a 4 to 6 minute window before your healing factor begins fusing tissue. If a doctor hasn't set that bone correctly before the window closes, your body locks it in whatever position it's currently sitting. Crooked, compressed, misaligned. Your accelerated repair process doesn't distinguish between correct and incorrect. It simply finishes the job. But the deeper problem is anesthesia. Your metabolism processes sedatives at approximately the same rate it processes everything else, which means a dose sufficient to knock out a normal adult burns through your system in under 90 seconds. General anesthesia becomes effectively useless. In 2019, researchers studying hypermetabolic patients in burn units documented how accelerated metabolic states required drastically adjusted pharmacological protocols, and those patients were operating at a fraction of your metabolic rate. For you, any procedure requiring sedation becomes a fully conscious experience. Every incision, every reset, every repair. Your healing is fast, your pain is not. And here is the misconception worth correcting. Faster healing is not the same as less suffering. In your case, it's often more, because you experience every stage of tissue repair at full neurological sensitivity, compressed into minutes instead of weeks. When you're considering a decision this week that trades short-term pain for long-term gain, notice whether you're actually accounting for what the short-term pain costs. Your body never gets to skip it, and neither do you. You are the fastest person alive, and you are always, without exception, late. Not because you can't get there in time, because the version of you that arrives is never quite the version that was expected. You miss the beginning of your partner's birthday dinner because you stopped a carjacking 7 miles away that took 4 seconds of real time but required 2 hours of your focused attention to execute without injuring bystanders. You miss the first half of a conversation with your best friend because you spent what felt like a full afternoon managing the sensory overload from a fire alarm 2 streets over. From the outside, you look unreliable. From the inside, you were never anywhere else. A 2021 longitudinal study tracking emergency responders across a decade found that chronic role conflict, the collision between professional obligation and personal commitment, was the single strongest predictor of relationship dissolution, stronger even than financial stress or communication breakdown. You are living the most acute version of that conflict possible, with zero ability to compartmentalize. Fastest alive. Still can't keep a single promise. The people who depend on you personally start quietly removing you from their expectations. Not dramatically. Just plans get made without consulting you. Invitations arrive later, with a tone that expects a no. They're not punishing you. They're just adjusting to the version of you that actually shows up. Think about one person in your life who has quietly stopped relying on you, not because you failed dramatically, but because you were consistently, undramatically unavailable. That quiet withdrawal is the fastest erosion there is.
There are 5 more layers to this that get considerably darker, including the moment your body starts converting to energy permanently and the specific decision framework you're forced to use when 2 people are dying simultaneously and you can only reach one. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because the second half of this is where the real argument lives. There was a night in your second year, a warehouse fire in the Port District around 2 a.m., where you pulled 200 people out of a burning structure in under 3 minutes of real time. A logistics worker named Marcus was the last one. He was unconscious on the 4th floor, surrounded by structural collapse, and getting to him required you to run a precise path through falling debris at a speed where one miscalculation would have killed you both. You got him out. You set him on the pavement outside, watched him start breathing again, and then stood there, completely alone. Because from everyone else's perspective, you'd appeared and disappeared before anyone registered you were there, and felt absolutely nothing. Not relief, not pride, not the residual adrenaline of a close call. Nothing. That blankness is what emotional numbing looks like when it's been accumulating for 2 years of compressed time. Psychiatric literature on first responders documents emotional blunting as a primary adaptation to chronic trauma exposure. The mind protecting itself by reducing affective response to high-stakes events. In your case, the compression of time means you accumulate trauma at a rate that would take a normal human decades. You saved Marcus. You weren't there for it. The scariest part wasn't the fire. It was realizing that the person who walked into that warehouse feeling something, fear, urgency, purpose, didn't walk back out. Pay attention this week to moments where you complete something significant and feel less than you expected to. That gap between accomplishment and feeling is worth examining before it widens. The most terrifying thing about your connection to the Speed Force is not the hunger, the isolation, or the altered time perception. It's this. Every time you run, a fraction of your physical mass converts to kinetic energy, and it doesn't fully convert back. Quantum field theory describes particles as excitations in underlying energy fields, matter and energy as 2 expressions of the same thing, convertible under the right conditions. Your body is undergoing a slow, continuous version of that conversion. Early on, the effect is imperceptible, but by your 3rd year, on days when you push toward your absolute speed ceiling, your hands become slightly translucent at the edges. Your shadow occasionally doesn't appear in photographs. These are not metaphors. Your molecular density is decreasing by measurable fractions. Push far enough, fast enough, and the conversion accelerates past the point of return. And what was, you becomes a pattern of energy in a dimensional space with no exit. There have been 3 moments in your life where you ran fast enough to feel the boundary of that threshold. A pull at the edge of your consciousness. Something vast and indifferent on the other side of it. The Speed Force doesn't want your power. It wants you. And here's the forward-looking reality. Physicists working on quantum decoherence models project that by 2035, we may be able to detect and measure these conversion thresholds in theoretical high-energy systems. The science is catching up to what your body already knows. Matter and identity are less stable than they appear. Identify one thing this week that you've been pushing past your actual limits to maintain. The conversion is already happening. The question is whether you're paying attention. Imagine meeting someone in your first year, before the numbness fully sets in, and actually letting yourself care about them. They know enough to stay. They've seen the eating, the disappearing, the 3 a.m. returns. They've made their peace with all of it. And then one morning, 5 years in, you notice something. A line at the corner of their eye that wasn't there last winter. A slight slowing in the way they get up from the couch. You haven't changed at all. Not one visible day. Your connection to the Speed Force appears to have dramatically decelerated your cellular aging. A phenomenon with partial precedent in caloric restriction research, where drastically altered metabolic states have been shown. in studies from the National Institute on Aging to extend cellular longevity in animal models by up to 40%. Your version is considerably more extreme. What this means in practice is that you will watch this person, someone you love, age across decades while you remain frozen. You will attend their 50th birthday, looking exactly as you did at their 30th. You will hold their hand in a hospital someday and look young enough to be their child. You don't grow old together. You watch them grow old alone, and you cannot even grieve it properly because grieving requires time. And your relationship with time stopped being normal the day the lightning hit. Think about the relationships in your life where you are changing at a different rate than the other person, growing faster or slower or in an incompatible direction. The divergence, not the distance, is what ends things. At 11:47 on a Thursday morning, your enhanced sensors pick up two simultaneous emergency signals: a school bus losing brake control on a highway overpass 4 miles north, and a gas line rupture igniting in a residential building 2 miles south. 31 children on the bus. Approximately 19 people in the building. You cannot reach both in time. This is not a hypothetical. This is Tuesday. The ethical framework philosophers use for these scenarios, triage ethics, most developed in medical and disaster response literature following the 1988 Armenian earthquake response, where field doctors were forced to formalize who received care based on survivability, breaks down almost immediately when applied to your situation. Because you're not choosing based on survivability, you're choosing based on geography and speed. The bus is farther. The building has fewer people. But 3 of the 19 in the building are children under 5, and 1 of the 31 on the bus is an adult chaperone. You make the call in under a second because you have to. You decide who dies. Then you go do the shopping. This is the weight that no training prepares you for, and no debrief can fully discharge. Triage is a skill. Living with triage is something else entirely, and nobody teaches you that part. When you're next forced to choose between 2 things you cannot both protect, notice whether you're making the decision or just letting circumstances make it for you. One of those is agency, the other is avoidance. Everyone assumes the hardest part of superspeed is the cost, the hunger, the isolation, the impossible choices, the slow molecular dissolution. But the hardest part is simpler and stranger than any of that. It's the morning you wake up and realize you can't remember what you wanted before the lightning. Not vaguely, specifically. You remember the shape of your old life, the apartment, the commute, the job, but the interiority of it. What you hoped for, what you were afraid of, what kind of person you were quietly trying to become. That's gone, replaced by 3 years of compressed experience that would take a normal human a century to accumulate. Identity psychologists, building on Erik Erikson's foundational 1950 framework on ego development, describe the self as a continuous narrative, a story we tell about who we are across time. Interrupt that narrative violently enough, for long enough, and the story doesn't continue. It restarts. You're not the person who got struck by lightning anymore. You're not quite the speedster either. That's a role, not a self. You are somewhere in between, running toward neither. And here is what no one tells you about having every physical advantage imaginable. It doesn't answer the one question that actually matters. Not, can I save everyone? Not, how fast can I go? Just, who is doing the running? That question doesn't get easier with speed. It gets faster. This week, try to finish this sentence without using your job, your relationships, or your accomplishments. I am someone who, whatever comes after that blank, is worth protecting.
Superspeed gives you everything: reaction time, reach, endurance, longevity, and takes the one thing none of those can replace: a stable sense of who you are. The hunger is manageable. The isolation is survivable. The identity erosion is the thing that actually ends you quietly, long before any villain does. If you want to understand what happens when a different kind of power does the same thing, strips a person of themselves in exchange for something extraordinary. The next video covers exactly that. You won't want to miss it.